Internet, it is I, InsaneLayne, coming at you with Game of Thrones Season 7, Episode 3, Where My House Targaryen Loyals At. Leave a comment. Please subscribe. I am desperately trying to get this channel off the ground. Please subscribe. I am on Twitter, at InsaneLayne25. I will get better at the Twitter. Let's see, lot to unpack. Season 7, Ep3, The Queen's Justice. Alright, a lot of setup, a lot of people meeting, a lot of strategizing. We get a couple of epic battles that we see enough to know they're saving the special effects money for later episodes. We open up with Jon Snow finally arriving at Dragonstone to meet Daenerys, where basically as soon as he comes ashore, he's taken prisoner, unofficially, you know, in the polite way. He's got a new look going on, and he's not the only one. Miss Sunday is sporting a nice triple dragon pin. She's looking very, very fine. And, let's see. I like between Jon and Tyrion, they banter about, you know, when we met at the wall and how different they both were. It's a nice little character bit. I always like the two of them. They have amazing chemistry. Sorry I'm, like, licking. It's super hot here. Where else am I? Oh, yeah. Okay, the thing with Jon and Tyrion is, like, these two could have been, like, the best, like, buddy comedy group, kinda, but they just keep winding up on the opposite sides of things, or winding up worlds apart from each other. I do like the walk up to the castle. It's very interesting. It's the kind of outdoor location shot you actually don't see much. I really want to know where did they film that, because it looks like a very cool place to go. There's a helicopter shot, which seems very odd for Game of Thrones. A lot of high shots, a lot of shots that probably are helicopter shots or crane shots. But this one, the way it circles, it just felt a little off for Game of Thrones, really. I had to do a bit of a double take, like, is this Game of Thrones or Lord of the Rings? Because they definitely ripped off that shot from Lord of the Rings, but I get why do it. Walking up to the castle, I do like that Tyrion has to tell Jon, you know, about the marriage to his sister, that it was a total sham and that I never touched her, and, you know, and Jon's like, I wasn't asking, but, you know, good to know. And I like that about Tyrion, that he needs to be thought of as honorable by other men that he considers honorable, and that he needed Jon to know that he didn't touch his sister, and that he treated her with respect and tried to protect her and take care of her. And even Sansa doesn't seem to really hold a grudge against Tyrion. She even said to Jon, you know, he's different than the other Lannisters. And she's right, he's the only one that hasn't been just unquestionably cruel. Except for the youngest, the one who was married to Marjorie. He wasn't cruel, but he was just too young and way in over his head, and, you know, he got caught up in all of the rest of it, and now he's dead like everyone else. The dragons flying overhead was nice. You know, like, you definitely know Dany told them to do that just for a little intimidation factor. That was a nice touch. Plus, who doesn't want to see the dragons, okay? They have to be in, like, every episode now. And we don't even get a close-up of them this episode. That's, I think, all we see of them is them flying in the distance. Again, we're saving the special effects money this week. You know, they had to pay for the helicopter. Where am I? And then we finally have the meeting. I love the steady shot walking up Daenerys on that awesome throne. Just when you thought a throne couldn't be more awesome than the Iron Throne, we get this throne. If we've heard what it's called, I don't remember. But it's very cool. It's very, very cool. It looks awesome. She looks awesome on it. I wish she was wearing a little less black. Or maybe a little something to make her stand out from the black behind her a little bit, because it gets a little lost. You get a bit of the floating head with the blonde effect. But everyone's wearing all black here, so, you know, not a lot of color going around. The meeting, I gotta say, this is a scene that not only is really long, I think it actually is like a sustained 10-minute scene. It feels a lot longer. Almost too long for my taste. Like, I wish some of the dialogue had been moved to other places, or it had been broken up a little, because it's a lot of back and forth. It's a lot of back and forth. Tyrion and Sir Davos take a shot at each other about the Battle of King's Landing. That was nice. And Daenerys, I gotta say, she's acting really, really arrogant with Jon. She's saying that, you know, because her father was king, therefore she's the rightful queen. I really hope she's not actually that stupid, because just because, Viserys, her brother, believed that that gave him some right, and therefore the old houses would back him, like, please tell me that she's smart enough to know that that claim is a bullshit. If she wants to be queen of the Iron Throne, yeah, it's good to say that because it gives the old houses reason to follow you, but I hope she doesn't really believe it, or believe that anyone else is going to believe it, because the only person in charge of the Seven Kingdoms and the Iron Throne is the person whose ass is currently sitting on the Iron Throne, and that's all that matters. And hopefully she knows that. And Jon is right to say, hey, I'm not going to hold you accountable for what your father did, but I'm not going to be held accountable by some promise that my ancestors made, which, by the way, your family kind of betrayed by burning some of my family alive, so... And she comes back with, well, you were friends with what's his name? Baratheon, the king from the first season, and he, overthrew my family and killed them. And Jon's like, well, then we'll both forgive each other for the past, but that means we don't owe each other anything either. And I gotta say, this is where I don't like the attitude Dany's throwing around here. I really hope they don't wreck her character after 6 years. If they wreck her character by turning her into, like, a Cersei/Joffrey type, the hyper-aggression and the kill anyone who opposes me, if they go that route with her, I'm going to be so disappointed. But hopefully they're smarter than that. Hopefully she's just playing strong for Jon, and she's going to eventually mellow out a little, because she desperately needs that. Again, it's so boiling hot here, and I can't have the fan on when I'm recording, or you wouldn't be able to hear me. So you'll forgive me if I'm very hot. Okay, so they go back and forth, and they talk about, Jon says, you could have taken King's Landing with your dragons immediately if you wanted to. You could be on the Iron Throne right now. And he correctly says, but to do that, you'd have to slaughter a lot of people, and you don't want to do that. But this leaves them at a bit of an impasse, because then it's Jon's turn to be stupid. He doesn't choose his words well at all. They're both having language failures here. Let's see. Yeah. And he tries to tell them about the White Walkers. He basically says, this beef between you and Cersei, yeah, I hate her too, and she's a stark-raving bitch, but we don't have time for this shit, is basically what he says. We don't have time for this shit. It doesn't matter who sits on the Iron Throne if the dead are about to overtake the living. And he's right, and he's getting to be a little at his wit's end, okay? For like 5 years now, he's been trying to convince people the Walkers are coming, the Walkers are coming, the White Walkers are coming, we're all gonna die, somebody do something. And now he's the guy who's got to do something, and nobody believes him. So, but to his credit, Tyrion, like I said, he knows Jon to be a man of honor, and he trusts him. So he, he's at least willing to listen, and he gets to that a little later on. I like that when Sir Davos is recounting, like, basically what a great man Jon is, because Daenerys goes off on Jon, saying, here's all the things that I have suffered, and I am sitting here as queen. Who the fuck are you? And Jon doesn't answer. Sir Davos steps up and says, well, I'll tell you who the fuck he is. This is Jon Snow, who was the commander of the Night's Watch, and then he was king of the North, and oh yeah, he died, and Jon gives him a look that says, shut up. And he shuts up, but not fast enough, and Dany knows something's up now. Tyrion waves it off later, saying, Northerners, they're bored, they make up stories. But, Daenerys is not buying that. Something's up there, and she wants to know what it is. Because she too is returned from the dead, as it were. Well, we don't know if she actually died. She's the unburnt, as they say. So they go back and forth a bit. And, Dany says, yeah, I don't want to burn my way to the Iron Throne, but that doesn't mean I need your help. And, they leave on the terms of, Jon's not a prisoner, but he also can't return to his ships, so he's going to stay as their honored guest for a little while. And at the last minute, Varys comes running in, and when he comes in, I'm like, where the fuck have you been, man? Like, just replay this entire scene with Varys in the room, and see how differently this interaction goes. Because as first meetings go, this one goes badly for both sides. They both make serious mistakes, they both say things they shouldn't, and both leaders are being, like, reined in seriously by the people with them. It's Tyrion and Sir Davos trying to keep these two people from basically coming to blows in this room, because they're both acting so arrogant and proud, and neither one is willing to give an inch, and they're basically just throwing insults and, you know, my life's worse than yours at each other. And that's not going to get anyone anywhere. Alright, so where are we now? Yeah, Viserys comes in, or not Viserys, sorry, Varys. Too many names that are fucking similar. I'm going to say that right now. Varys comes in, and he tells them of Euron Greyjoy's attack. Now they know that at least 2 of the Sand Vipers are dead. 1 or more of the Greyjoys is dead. He says, basically the fleet is destroyed, and we don't know who's dead and who's been captured. But this is really bad. We get to see that Theon is alive. This is the only time we see Theon. He basically gets dragged onto the ship where some of the other Iron Islanders basically say, if you had really defended your sister, you wouldn't be alive, so fuck you. And that's where I hope we leave Theon. I was honestly hoping they'd throw him back in. Like, get what information he has and then throw him back in. Let the sea have him. Because it would be an appropriate end to his character, and I do think his character needs to end. I mean, what else can they do with him, honestly? I mean, what, is he going to bravely sacrifice himself for Yara at the last minute and we're supposed to forgive him for, like, now? I don't know, but I've had enough of Theon. He just needs to go away. There are other characters I wish they'd kept alive more than him. A lot more than him. I will say, I may have made a mistake in the last episode when I said that it was Yara hanging from the bow of the ship. It's clearly not, because we see her shortly. It was apparently the 2 daughters of the Sand Vipers that were on the bow of the ship. In my defense, that scene is entirely at night, outside, and it is not lit well at all. We only see the 2 bodies from a distance. We never get a close-up of their faces or really even their costumes, and seriously, look at the girl hanging and tell me what she's wearing doesn't look exactly like what Yara is wearing. But Yara is alive, and we get Euron having a bit of a Caesar moment as he is parading Yara and the remaining Sand Vipers through the streets of King's Landing to the castle to present to Cersei. And, you know, once he gets to the throne room, man, he does some strutting and some prancing like a prized peacock. He is showing off all that he can, boasting about how big his dick is, and he's the master of the sea, and blah, blah, blah. And Cersei, you know, smiles at him, and, like, she's pleased with these gifts. She's happy. This is what she's been wanting for a long time. The people that killed her daughter, and, you know, I don't think she has anything really against Yara, except that she's on the other side, so, you know, good to have her as well, even if it's not personal there. And she tells Euron that he'll get what his heart desires after the war's over. I love the way she says it, because he, of course, thinks that he's going to get Cersei. We both know that's never going to happen. She's never going to marry him. I'm sure she's already devised 17 ways to kill him. And she probably is just going to kill him when she's done with him. Or if she can, you know, get him to stick around as a captain of her navy and give him a castle. Puppy, what are you doing? Hey! Don't mind him. There's a new puppy next door, and every time he hears it, you know, they want to get to know each other. Now that I've completely lost my spot, and I'm not editing this out, because fuck that shit. That's how this series is going to be. In case you haven't figured it out, my first thoughts series is going to be very raw, very unscripted, off the cuff. I'm going off notes here. You're going to see me looking over. There's going to be dogs barking. If you're looking for something more refined, check out my completed reviews. But this is the only way I'm going to be able to do a lot of the shows that I want to do, is if I keep it to a very simple, short format. Because I just don't have time. The full-length reviews like I do on Handmaid's Tale, those take 3 or 4 days to do. And I just don't have that kind of time for doing Game of Thrones and Westworld. I do eventually hope to do full reviews on all Game of Thrones show, but that's going to be like years worth of work. That's way in the future. And I wouldn't start it until after the whole series was over. I would never start that till the whole series had definitively ended, not counting any spin-offs or second versions they might make. Just to get that out there. And, yeah, so the other thing, when Euron is, you know, he's feeling himself after Cersei tells him, yeah, you're gonna get what you want, it's gonna be great since the war's over, and then she puts him and Jaime in charge of, basically her army, land and sea, the 2 of them, and, we think that, now I know that Jaime's definitely gonna be the one to kill Euron, because he goes explicit when asking Jaime how Cersei likes to be fucked. Just comes right out with it. So yeah, Jaime's definitely gonna stab him through the throat at some point. But then we cut to Cersei, and now it's her turn to gloat. She's been dreaming of this. She's been fantasizing about how she would kill these people. What's the best way to kill them to make them suffer? She says, I thought about doing this to you. I thought about doing that to you, but I want you to suffer slowly and painfully. So first she starts a little teasing, and she does point out that them killing Myrcella was not fair play. Not fair play. That was an underhanded move, ladies. And I agree, the death of Myrcella was not necessary. It was going too far in terms of revenge. I get why Illyria did it, but she was wrong. In my opinion, she was wrong. The death of Myrcella was unneeded. And I love that Cersei talks about, the boys were always going to be kings and princes, but Myrcella I could have. She could be mine. She didn't have to be raised a certain way. I could raise her and really be her mother. I like that she teases Illyria with the foolishness of Oberyn's death, which is true. He died because he was being a cocky show-off. He won that fight, and then he gave it up with ego. And, even Illyria has said so, because the daughters said, Mama said he died from being foolish. And it was the daughter that's still alive that actually said that. And she's right. He did. He died a fool. And then Cersei reveals, she came up with the classic. She will let Illyria's daughter die the way that Myrcella died, with poison lipstick. And all the women instantly know when Cersei kisses her. They know what's happened. And we see Cersei drink the antidote. And the poison is apparently a slow-acting one. It could take days, could take weeks to kill. And Cersei reveals the rest of her plan for Illyria. She is going to leave her chained to that wall, unable to touch her daughter or reach her, and force her to watch her die, and then just basically abandon her down there to watch her daughter's body rot and probably go insane. Is this the last we will see of Illyria? I doubt it. I really hope that, she escapes somehow and goes after Cersei, or that she gets a more fitting death than that. I'm sure that's not the last we'll see of her. So I hope they do something cool, at least, with her, because that's not a fitting end to that character. But all this revenge and casual murder has Cersei feeling pretty frisky. And, at first Jaime says, I'm not in the mood. Cersei can be a persuasive woman, especially when she gets on her knees. And just the sounds they put in, just, oh my god, just only on HBO. And then we have her and Jaime in bed, and it's an actual nice moment. They're in bed together, they're happy. It's an actual nice moment for the two of them. And, I don't begrudge them their relationship. I don't give a fuck about the brother-sister thing. Screw it. Especially back then. Well, not really back then, because it's alternate reality, but, between royalty and especially noble houses and that, it's not like they're the first ever. Okay, it used to be quite common for brothers and sisters to be married in royal families, so, everyone in Westeros just needs to get the fuck over themselves and mind who's in their own bed and stop minding other people's. If only we could do that today. And I love that Cersei's like, Jaime's like, they can't see us, and Cersei's like, I'm the fucking queen, I'll do what I want, and anyone who has a problem with it, I have dungeons for that. So I love this. And, but Cersei, she's got to get on with being queen because someone from the Iron Bank in Braavos has arrived. And he's basically shown up to say, hey, your father owed us a lot of money, and you're broke. You have no friends that have the kind of money that could pay us back. Your enemies are wealthy, but hey, they're your enemies now. And you don't have a lot of friends. So, while they, again, we have more banter, we have more back and forth. I like Cersei's attitude here. She does not mince words with this guy. She's not going to keep it polite. She just says, you want your money, and you're here to bet on who's going to be sitting on the Iron Throne at the end. And if you think it's me, then you'll back me, but if not, this guy could go and fund one of her enemies, and that's going to be the end of Cersei Lannister. And she's aware of this. So she says to the guy, give me a little time here. I'll send you home with your money in just 2 weeks. Just stay as my guest for a bit, and all will be well. And he apparently goes along with this. He's like, okay, we'll give her a chance, because, She is the one on the throne right now, and they can't underestimate the power of that. Cersei also points out that, hey, Daenerys kind of fucked up the slave trade for you, and that must have cost you big money. So wouldn't you kind of like to be on, the side with me against her? Because she's gonna change life as we know it. She's a revolutionary. She's gonna, you guys are not gonna make a lot of money with her as queen. She's gonna get rid of slavery and other lucrative things. So that seems to get him on her side. At least he's willing to wait and see how the dice roll. Alright. Yeah, he talks about the dragons and blah blah blah. Yeah. Okay, then we go back to Dragonstone, and now we have the real meeting with Jon and Tyrion. Away from the throne room, away from the pretense and the throwing titles at each other. They can just be guys here and just talk like, like, not really friends, but, people who at least trust each other a little bit. Tyrion is mourning the fact that he didn't see Euron's attack coming, which, maybe they could have, maybe not. I mean, one thing they say repeatedly is they don't know where Euron's fleet is. And yeah, you're tracking a fleet, yes, which is huge, but the ocean is a lot bigger. And once it's out of sight of land, nobody's going to know where it is. And you don't have, like, the internet, and there's nobody tweeting at, hey, I saw Euron's fleet outside LA Market. That's not happening. So, knowing where he is a bit of a problem. So maybe Tyrion could have predicted it, maybe not. And Jon is whining that nobody believes him about The Walking Dead, and, Tyrion comments that Jon broods better than he does, and yeah, they're both doing some hardcore, like, angel-level brooding, and they're both kind of at an impasse, and they admit it. They're like, what the fuck are we gonna do? Jon's saying, how can people not believe this threat is gonna overtake us all, this petty, who's the king of whatever shit, doesn't fucking matter. We got to get on with dealing with the real threat. Why doesn't anybody believe me? And Tyrion, to his credit, he says, you two have to trust each other. You don't know each other. She doesn't know you. You don't know her. And he tells Jon, talk to some of the people that she's saved. Get to know what she's really like as a queen so that you can trust her. Jon comes back and says, that may be well and good. We'll talk, but right now I need Dragonglass. If we can get working on that, maybe I'll trust her. So, Dany doesn't believe in the White Walkers, but Tyrion does, to an extent, and he points out to Dany that, if she doesn't believe in the Walkers, then Dragonglass is useless to her. And he says she didn't even know it was there. So what's the harm in letting Jon waste his time by mining it and turning it into weapons? I mean, I guess it makes good weapons. Why not? There's not a downside for her. I am wondering if Dragonglass can also kill dragons. Do we know this? Does anybody know this? Is she handing the weapons to kill her dragons to Jon Snow? So, Daenerys goes along. She says, okay, he can have all the Dragonglass that he wants. He can waste his time. That'll keep him busy while I work on things like Casterly Rock and the Iron Throne and, actually winning. And then I'll deal with Jon Snow later. And again, she mentions the part about Jon dying and being brought back, but she doesn't know the full story yet. But it's clear she's not going to let this go. He's not leaving that island until she gets the full story. Alright, so her and Jon meet out at the gorgeous wall in the outside part of wherever they are that's beautiful. And they both drop a lot of the pretense here. They both come at each other much more like people this time. They're much more down to earth. There's no throwing titles or, bend the knee or any of that fucking shit. And they both draw their lines and they're miles apart, but at least when it comes to the Dragonglass, they can work together. Jon asks her, do you believe me? She doesn't answer. But she also doesn't say no to him. So basically she's saying, she's kind of treating him like a child and she's giving him a toy to distract him while mommy gets on with the real work. Where are we then? We then go back to Winterfell. And we see Sansa. Can I just take a minute to note that, the actress playing Sansa's, like, taller than most of the men she's walking with? She's walking with, like, 7 men, and I swear, she's like a half-inch taller than pretty much all of them. She is way taller than Littlefinger. I'm not sure that's intended for the character, but it just makes me laugh. It looks awesome. You go, girl. Because she is stepping into much more of a leadership role with Jon Snow gone, possibly forever, because everyone thinks it's very foolish what he's doing. He's not going to come back, possibly. She's focusing on the future. She's saying, hey, winter is coming, and we got to make sure we have food. We possibly are going to have an army under siege. We may have all the peoples of the north running here for safety inside the castle walls. We got to make sure we can feed people. So that's good. She's taking control of that. She does say something that I think is going to have maybe some problems going on, because she wants the other houses to start sending their grain store to Winterfell, and says, if we don't need it, or if winter isn't as long as it could be, we'll send it back. But I think the other houses are going to have a problem with this, because they're not going to want to give up food when they don't know how long the winter's going to be. And how are you going to send a wagon full of grain in the middle of winter to some far-reaching location? The roads are not going to be passable. There's going to be issues with this, is what I'm saying. But as this goes on, Littlefinger still trying to get in Sansa's pants, man. He still thinks he's got a shot, and he takes a real good crack at it here. He's getting all esoteric and trying to blow her mind with, the world is this and that, and do things really matter, man? And, he's getting real deep. And, but, he gets totally cock-blocked by the arrival of, Bran Stark. Finally, we have two of the Stark children, other than Jon and Sansa, together again. People who have not seen each other since the first season. And, he's obviously very, very different. So she's overjoyed to see him. They go to the God's Tree for a while, where he tries to explain about the Three-Eyed Raven thing, but she's not really getting it. We have a lot of... I feel like Sansa in that scene almost goes back to being season 1 Sansa, because she comes off very fucking stupid. Not at all the person we've been following for the last 3 episodes at best, where she almost has a brain, but she goes back to being full-on idiot and complete emotional crippled bitch, because when she fails to immediately understand and Bran tries to... say that he saw her wedding and she was so beautiful, she runs off. She can't take it. And, maybe remembering that night would be hard. It would be awful, but you haven't seen your brother in, 5 years, and you thought he was dead, and he's trying to explain how he's now, master of time or something. So, I would have stayed a bit longer and gotten some more information if it was me. Then we see Jorah! My Jorah, yes, and he's alive, and he's gonna live, and the grayscale is cured, and the Maester is like, you'd almost think somebody did that thing I explicitly told you not to do, Sam, who I will see in my office later. So Sam's in trouble. But, Jorah's alive, and he's being released from the Citadel, and he's got a date to keep with Daenerys, so hats off to him. I hope he gets back to her side real soon. I think he knows that she's in Dragonstone, or he'll find out soon. And I'm not sure how far the Citadel is from Dragonstone, but he'll make it. I hope the next time we see him, he's walking in to her throne room. I really do. And then Sam, gets called to the carpet for what he did, and he totally confesses it. He says, yes, I did the thing you explicitly told me not to do. I was aware of the risk, but I just couldn't let him die. And the boss guy says, wow, you could have really fucked up, you know that? You put yourself at risk, you could have gotten grayscale, you could have infected everyone here, you could have killed everyone in the Citadel. Do you have any idea what a dumbass idea that was, and the damage you could have done? And Sam just stands there and takes it. He's like, yep, you're right. And then the guy's like, but you didn't. You managed to do this incredibly hard thing that I didn't think was possible without infecting yourself. Which we know the guy who invented it, it's how he died. He infected himself by trying to use this treatment on someone else. And he asked Sam, how did you do that? Some of the healers around here, they're older than dirt, and you're more competent than them. And Sam, to his credit, says, I'm nothing special. I just read the instructions, and I followed them. Okay, decent answer. So, Sam he gets just one small moment of an attaboy. Then he gets promptly kicked in the balls and sent back to his place when he's handed a bunch of old moldy scrolls and told, copy these. This is a job that looks like it will take about 10 years to do. And that's where we leave Sam. We're getting pieces of some people We're kind of touching in on various other stories, but we're sticking with the main cast for the big moments. Everyone else is getting like one little short scene to just let us know they're still there. Yeah, then we have Dany wants to know where Euron is because she's planning to send her dragons. They're not going to risk the rest of their ships on a sea battle, but she'll send her dragons to burn them down. But Tyrion points out, well, then she would have to go with the dragon. She would have to be riding one of them to control them. And that's not a good idea in the middle of a firefight because all it takes is one arrow, as Missandei says. One arrow and she's gone, and Tyrion's like, no, you're too important. Now, we know she doesn't have the best history of listening to her advisors when it comes to putting herself at risk, so I definitely think we could see Daenerys riding a dragon into battle, and really hasn't that been what the whole show has been leading up to? I certainly hope so. But we have some good news because they start talking about the Unsullied setting siege to Casterly Rock, where Tyrion points out that, hey, I had a secret whore chamber built when I lived there. Because, you know, Dad didn't like prostitutes, so, you know, I built the secret whore chamber, more or less. And that's how the Unsullied will get in and take the castle, and they do. We don't see a lot of the battle, but they do take the castle, but it's a little too early to celebrate because they realize this was too easy. There should have been a lot more guards. There should have been a lot more of a defense. This should have been much harder than it was. And they look out and see that Euron's fleet has surrounded them and destroyed what was left of Daenerys' ships. They're trapped on the island. Probably much of the Unsullied and their supplies are gone. They're in some real trouble now. So we turn to the question of where are the Lannister forces if they're not defending Casterly Rock? And we quickly find out they're with Jaime. He's apparently chosen to abandon Casterly Rock because, like he says later, not a lot of value there, and once Cersei's queen of the Seven Kingdoms, they'll just take it back anyway, so, you know, for now, he's got other things to do, and that's because he's going to Highgarden. He's going after the Tyrells. And as soon as I realized who they're going after, this is Cersei's plan to repay the Iron Bank. The guy even said the only one who has the money to cover her debt is the Tyrells, and they're your enemy. Well, Cersei's ahead of them because she's ordered Jaime to capture Highgarden, which he does, and so now he has all the Tyrells' money. And I love the chat with him and Lady Olenna. Like, this is so perfect. Because there's no real animosity between these two. They haven't had a lot of contact with each other, but they don't have any real reason to hate each other. You know, Jaime's blaming her for, what does he blame her for? Myrcella, I think? But she didn't have anything to do with that other than she's allies with the people who did now, so I guess there's that. So they chat for a little while, it's very nice, the way they talk to each other, and, you know, she asks, did they fight well, and at least that's something, and, you know, she tries to leave a little wisdom with Jaime, but he's not really listening. He says, you know, before they left Casterly Rock, by the way, we took all the food, anything valuable, so they're going to be forced to abandon it and start a very long walk home, because we've destroyed all their ships, and they're not going to be able to stay there with no food. So that leaves Grey Worm in a very bad position. You know, he's got to get back to Missandei, and so it's going to be interesting to see what he does, because Grey Worm, we see on his face, he knows how screwed they are. They don't know about the missing food yet, but he knows those ships were their way home. But I could also see, we do know Unsullied are taught to swim, so I could see them, like, pulling a Pirates of the Caribbean walk through the ocean and capturing Euron ships and using those to get home. That's the fastest way. That's what they're going to go for somehow or another. They will at least try that. I mark my words. And but Lady Olenna and Jaime, they're just awesome, because Lady Olenna, she's not holding back. She's like, Cersei's a monster. You know she's a monster. She'll be the end of you, Jaime. She will. And Jaime basically says, yeah, you're probably right, but I love her. And Lady Olenna's like, yeah, you're screwed. And you know, Jaime says, I like what, oh yeah, the other thing Lady Olenna says that I like is, she compares herself to Cersei, actually, saying, you know, I did what I had to protect my family, just like Cersei, but I could never imagine the lengths that Cersei would go to. And Jaime says, you know, yeah, Cersei had all these horrible ways she wanted you to die, but I talked her out of it. And he says he believes that, Cersei's like this right now because has to be defensive. She has to be aggressive. They're under attack from all sides. And he's right. But, he figures once she's in full control of everything, she'll settle down. She'll stop being so evil. Yeah, right. Because she was always evil. Before any of this, she was always just as evil. That's true. He seems to be a good guy because he pulls out some poison, which he assures Lady Olenna is painless. To her credit, she takes one look at it and chugs it like a sorority girl done with finals. Only classy, And then the moment we've been waiting for so long, and I was like, come on, she can't die without this. And finally, she tells Jaime the truth, that it was her. She killed Joffrey. She ordered his death, and she says, I didn't intend for him to die that violently or painfully. I'd never seen the poison work before. And Jaime looks enraged, and for a second I thought he was gonna, stab her or cut off her head or something, but he keeps it together. He just walks out. Now, that's when it cuts to black. He walks out, she's sitting there, she has drank the poison that he gave her, and that's where it cuts to black. And now I am forced to invoke movie rules. We didn't see her die. She did not die on screen. We don't know if she's dead. I say this in the end of Lady Olenna. I'm giving it a 70-30 that we will see her alive again, because we know several things, even things that were shown in this episode. And one thing Game of Thrones does that I think they shouldn't, this is a discredit to them, is they will show the answer to something in an early scene and then the problem occurring in a later scene. I remind you of the episode where Jorah was infected with the grayscale. It is earlier in that same episode when Princess Sharon, the little princess that had the grayscale, is talking to Sir Davos, and she recounts to him the story of how she was cured when she was a baby. And now, that is the first time in Game of Thrones that we really hear what the disease is, that it's usually fatal, and that there is a cure, and sort of how she was cured. She doesn't know a lot of details, but that a cure exists, and that's the first time we're hearing of it. And then later in that episode, Jorah gets infected, so of course we've already set up that a cure exists, and since he's, main character guy, and not that that means a lot in Game of Thrones, but that they're not done with him yet, that there is hope because there is a cure for this. And I really hated that in that episode, that they both did this horrible thing to Jorah, which I still hated, and made you believe they were about to kill him off this way, but then they set up the cure for it earlier in the episode, and that's just giving your hand away. That should have been in a much later episode, after we'd worried about Jorah and thought he's going to die and he's condemned, and then say, oh yeah, there's a cure many episodes later, is how I would have preferred it done. Now, the reason I say all that is because in this episode, the way Lady Olenna supposedly dies is by drinking poison. Yet in this very episode, we see Cersei using likely the same poison or a similar poison in the poison kiss to kill the last of the daughters in front of Lady Illyria. People got too many similar names, man, and they're all called Lady something. Like Lady Olenna, Lady Illyria, like just enough with the similar names. I swear, George R.R. Martin, he ran out of names, he started just changing one letter from names I already had. But we see Cersei do the poison kiss and then drink the antidote. There are antidotes to poisons. Now, obviously Lady Olenna doesn't know how she's going to die. She asked Jaime that a couple of times, how is he going to kill her? But she does come from a place where poisons come from and antidotes come from, so is it possible that she drank some kind of an antidote before, like hoping that poison would be what Jaime said? This is reaching for straws, I admit, grasping at straws here. But, possible. And, also shown in this episode, castles have secret passages. I'm just putting it out there. I don't think we've seen the last of Lady Olenna. And I hope not. Again, I don't read, like, trade magazines or spoilers or gossip columns or any of that shit, so I'm not watching any of that. Just based on what's in the show, she didn't die on screen, that rule applies. Recall the Hound. Okay, everybody thought that he was dead. I didn't. I said to a friend after that episode, we were talking about my friend was like complaining that his character that he liked, the Hound, was dead. And I was like, what are you talking about? He's not dead. My friend's like, of course he's dead. Look at the situation they left him in. She left him to die. And I'm like, yeah, but you didn't see him die, did you? Horror movie rules. You don't see the person die on screen. You are not sure they're dead. So, Hopefully we get more of Lady Alana. Then we have, let's see, we have Jon and Daenerys. They have their uneasy relationship. We're going to see where that goes. I kind of think Jon might never get off that island alive. When is she gonna find out that Jon is half Targaryen, as he most likely is? You know, let's just fuck the most likely, he is. But when is anyone gonna find that out? You know, Bran says, I gotta talk to Jon, I gotta tell him, basically. But how is he gonna tell him? He's gonna have to take over somebody there, in order to communicate with Jon. I think we'll see that in the next episode. I'm certainly looking forward to it. I did hear about the hack that is apparently taking place. Not just Game of Thrones, but other shows as well. I certainly hope that they're not leaked online, because as much as I would like to see them early, that's not how I want to do it. And I want the show to be put out on its own time, the way it's intended. So until then, I will review episode 4 next week when it comes out. Leave your thoughts in the comments. Let me know what you think of the new channel, the new series, anything I can be doing better. I'm sure that's a long list. But for now, I am InsaneLayne, and that was Game of Thrones, Season 7, Episode 3, The Queen's Justice. Bye-bye.